The Atheist Debates Patreon Project presents Equivocating on Faith. How's everybody doing? As I mentioned, I've been spending a little bit of time on TikTok in between videos and other things. I've got some debates coming up, and I did a convention in Orlando. I've got another convention coming up in Atlanta for American Atheists. But in between, I'll spend some time on TikTok because I'm curious as to how the conversations are going there. And I thought I would give an example of that by responding and kind of expanding a bit on some thoughts from a discussion I saw. There was an atheist host who had opened up their channel to basically take questions and to answer questions. And that includes letting theists come in to explain what they believe and why, kind of like a little TikTok miniature version, live version of atheist experience type stuff. And in one case, somebody came in to basically suggest that their confidence in God, which was based on faith, but you have faith too. There's been so much time and energy spent by atheists disparaging faith, and I'm guilty of it and will continue to be, because my definition of faith is that faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. Because somebody asks you why you believe something and you have a good reason, you give that good reason. If instead you make an appeal to faith, you're basically admitting that you don't have a good reason. But this person came in to suggest, because faith is often used as a pejorative, that all the rest of us have faith too, which is already a bit of a fallacy as to, what we're objecting to is the justification. Because what they're actually saying is everybody believes things with imperfect and incomplete data, which means you are accepting things and you have established a confidence level in propositions in the absence of absolute certainty, in the absence of perfect or complete information, which means that you're exercising faith, and every time you exercise faith, your faith in everything else is on par with their faith in a God. Well, even if we were to grant their kind of equivocating definitions of faith and just say that it's belief in something in the absence of perfect or complete data, it still doesn't put their God and every belief that we have in the same category at all. To make this case, they started talking about, how do you know that when you smell petrol or gasoline, that's actually what you're smelling? Rather than keep doing the petrol or gasoline, I'm going to switch to gas and make it natural gas, because the same issue works here. And so when I smell natural gas, I have a gas stove downstairs. How do I know that I'm smelling gas? Well, because I have past experiences with this smell and supporting evidence associated with that smell from those events, and the ability to actually test my suspicion that what I smell is gas. I have the ability to go down and check the stove, to listen, to attempt to light it, to check the pilot lights, to investigate, to get someone else to come in and say, hey, is this a natural gas leak? Because knowledge, to say I know this, knowledge doesn't require 100% certainty. But if you change the question, if knowledge is such a roadblock for you, like how do you know that it's gas? Change the question to say, why do you think you have a reasonable belief that you smelled gas? It's fundamentally the same thing that we're asking, because generally speaking, knowledge is just belief held to a strong degree of confidence. It's a subset of belief. And because the belief-knowledge distinction isn't at all relevant, what we're really asking is, you have some confidence level that what you smell is gas. What is your justification for that confidence level? Well, as long as we point to the justification for that confidence level being, we have past experience with gas, we can have someone come in and verify, we have a way to test to find out how likely we are to be right or wrong. We know that this works. And one of the reasons why I switched it to natural gas is that natural gas doesn't have a smell, an odor, naturally, that we can detect. We add a distinct odor to it for safety so that you can tell. And that smell, it smells like rotten eggs. And so anticipating the follow-up question of, well, if it smells like rotten eggs, how do you know it's not rotten eggs? And the answer is, because rotten eggs don't smell like that. And that's one of my favorite little kind of amusing moments that I've had in trying to understand this stuff and find different ways to explain it. Because anybody who's been around natural gas knows that it has that sulfuric, natural or rotten egg odor, but it's still distinct. And it's not a problem that we can say we've made gas smell like rotten eggs. And when somebody says, well, how do you know you're not smelling rotten eggs? It's because they don't smell like that. And what we're saying is there's still a distinction. We gave it a strong odor, and this is the closest we can come to when we're describing the similarity. It's a curiosity that we can recognize the difference and the similarities in those smells contextually just from language to make you realize the difference in what you're talking about. And so what they're addressing here is that, do you have a good reason to think your senses are reliable then? How do you know it's gasoline? The problem here is that they have a belief or a confidence level in the face of uncertainty and an inability to investigate thoroughly. And that's what we all have. For every position we have, we're really not able to thoroughly investigate it. We can't get perfect knowledge on this. But they have confidence when there's a dearth of supporting evidence. And maybe, instead of saying you have confidence in it, maybe you should not be confident in those situations. The reliability of our senses can be tested and measured and identified and verified. We can tell when we're accurately smelling reality, when we're actually hearing, seeing, and touching and tasting reality. We know when these things are altered because we can actually study and compare. Well, how do you know that the person who smells something different from you isn't smelling the real thing and they're the only ones on the whole planet that can? Well, okay, we can't rule that out, but that's the thing is we're not making 100% proclamations. The odds are good that if one person on the planet senses something that nobody else does, we are all justified in not believing that that thing is real until such time as there's more supporting evidence for it. We can investigate the substance. If I smell fuel, gas, natural gas, petroleum, or petrol, we can investigate the substance and scientifically verify if what we think we smelled is what we actually smelled. None of this is remotely in the ballpark of how people exercise faith when it comes to a God. When smelling gas, we have actual gas that we can verify and test. We can go pick it up in a container. We can have people come out and investigate. There's no such thing for God. And so when people are exercising the type of faith that they do, when they're claiming that they've found a God, to find a God by faith, if it were truly analogous to smelling something and trusting your senses, would be like becoming convinced that you smell a particular odor that you can't accurately describe, and that while others disagree with your description of the odor, and others can't seem to smell it at all, and none of us have anything to point to as an explanation for what that perceived odor is, you've determined it's God's fart. Well, how did you know? If I investigate whether or not what I'm smelling is gas, I have other things I can compare it to. I have other instances of natural gas other than just what's downstairs at my stove. You don't have any other God's farts or gods to investigate. When you show how and why you reach reasonable conclusions, sometimes the conversation shifts and leads to this: are your senses reliable? Is reality real? Is reason reasonable? How do you know you're not a brain in a vat? When your interlocutors, when the people you're having conversations with have to change the topic from do we have good reasons for this to how can you be sure that your reality is real and how can you be sure that reason is reasonable, they've lost. Those are things that we accept by default at the start of the conversation, because if the truth is that we disagree about whether or not reality is real, that should have been the real debate. When they have to change the topic from the real debate to is reality real, they've lost. And it means that they were either not honest at the beginning when they presented their case, or they're not being honest now. In either case, it's a problem. I don't have faith in the way religious people use it to support their God belief. Do I have confidence in the face of uncertainty? Yes. Do I have reasonable expectations or reasonable beliefs justified by evidence? even though I have incomplete or inaccurate, imperfect information? Yes, I do. And my confidence level is proportional to the actual evidence for it. The truth is, I have reasonable expectations based on and proportional to confirmed information about past experiences, otherwise known as evidence. If you want to call that faith and you want to play on the same footing, then what you need to do is show that your faith in a God is based on reasonable expectations that are proportional and confirmed, or proportional to confirmed information about past experiences with an actual God. But if you don't have any God to point to, then as much as you dislike it, the phrase blind faith does in fact apply. See you next time.